Morning, everybody.
Hi everyone. I'm thrilled that you all haven't just given up and gone about your evening. Well done. Thank you very much for your patience.
And thank you for being here on what is a lovely sunny evening as well. To give up that time to be with us here is quite heartwarming as well. So thank you for that. Okay, without further ado, I will get started. So hello, welcome. It's Monday evening, and for me, it already feels like it's Friday. Does it feel like it should be Friday to anybody else? Yes, I've got that feeling too. So my name's Sam, if you haven't met me before, and I work for Eden Project Communities as the community engagement lead. What that really means is that it's otherwise known as I'm the nosy one, and I like to get stuck in and involved with various community projects, and I get quite excitable about community projects and ideas that we could get started where we live. I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. I've just noticed somebody's popped in the chat that they can't hear anything. Can everybody else hear okay? Is that just going on for one person? Okay, brilliant. That's good. So you'll notice that we popped everybody on mute. Please don't take that as we are trying to quieten you. It's quite the opposite, really. So we'd love to hear your voices throughout the session. We've done that so that if there's anything going on in your background, you don't need to worry about it. There's definitely some gaming going on in my background with my son playing in his room. So I'll be going on mute as soon as I finish speaking as well. So you don't have to endure that. I will just turn on the captions. So for anybody that might need that, they've just turned on. Equally, if you don't need them or you find them a distraction, you can pop on to captions and just click hide captions down there as well. I will be recording tonight's session, but only in speaker view, so it's likely to only see myself or Andy most of the time on that video, so you don't need to worry about catching yourself on there. But if you'd prefer to, you can of course turn your video off. And a little bit later on, we will be having some small breakout rooms where you can chat to each other in a little bit more detail and save yourself from our voices. So a little bit about Eden Project Communities. So our mission really is about demonstrating and inspiring positive action for people and communities across the UK, things that are good for people where they live or for the environment in which they live. And I suppose we like to give people the ideas for things that they could do where they live and a little bit of confidence to make that happen because it can be quite a lonely place or a hard thing to get started. You might have heard us as being the people behind the big lunch, which is coming up on the 7th and 8th of June. And that's really about bringing people together, a couple of friends, a couple of neighbours to share friendship, food, and fun. And that's why we're delighted to be hosting this session and with More Human, and Andy's going to be taking tonight's session because if you're here and like ourselves and like More Human, it's probably because you're interested in how you can help situations where people can connect with one another, feel like they belong, and to make long lasting friendships. And I think that's what we're all about here this evening. So we couldn't do a session about connecting with each other without trying to do a little bit of connection with each other before we get started. It'd be horrid for you to go away and say, "Oh, we did a session on connecting with one another, but we didn't actually connect with one another." So we're going to give that a little go and find out a little bit more about you now. So has anybody heard of the game Would You Rather? Would you rather? So I'll give you two options and you decide which one you would rather out of those two options. And I'm doing this for no other reason than it's a little bit of fun and it's a bit playful so that we can get started in that frame of mind. So I've just popped into the chat the first question. So would you rather have everything that you eat being a bit too salty or not salty enough? So A, if you'd prefer it to be a bit too salty, B, not salty enough. Oh, look, it's like A, B, A, B, A, B at the moment. Oh, Phoebe, you were first in there. I'm going to come to you, Phoebe. Why was your answer a bit too salty? You'd have to come off mute as well. That's all right. No? Okay, Kelly, you also picked a bit too salty. Can I come to you as to why you've picked that one?
Yeah, I just like putting lots of salt on my food, so I think I'd be pretty miserable if I didn't have enough. So
Yeah,
that's what I go for.
yeah, weirdly, I'm a salt person as well, but not on popcorn, right? It's got to be sweet popcorn, not salty popcorn.
I like them both, salt and
Okay, so
sweet.
you'd go okay. And
Yeah.
Andy, you were the opposite. You went, I know you were a bit too salty as well. Joan,
But on
you've gone
popcorn
for
in
not
particular,
salty
I need
enough.
to just need to be clear on popcorn, salt, definitely. Sorry, Sam. Feel like
Oh no. And Joan, you've gone not salty enough, so you're not a salt fan, no?
I like salt, but just not too much. So I'd rather under, and then I could sneak some on.
Love it. Love how people get creative and they find ways that they can get to their desire. Okay, I am going to pop another one into the chat. So, would you rather listen to your favorite song on repeat for a week or not be able to listen to your favorite song for a whole year? This is like when you go to the supermarket and they have that annoying song going over and over again, isn't it? And you feel sorry for the workers there because they have to endure that all day. Andy, you look like you're in thought mode. Oh no, you've gone straight in. Okay, so mixed reaction again. Andy, I'm going to come to you. So not be able to listen to your favorite song for a year, is that because then when you do listen to it, it's bliss?
yeah, I feel like if I had to listen to it on repeat for a week, I'd never be able to listen to it ever again. So I'd rather just take like a year off and be able to enjoy it for the rest of my life.
Nice. And what is your favorite song?
No idea. That's too
Okay.
big and difficult a question right now to try and comprehend.
And Laura, you said that you'd listen to yours on repeat for a week. What's your favorite song, Laura?
Hello, sorry. Shape of You by Ed Sheeran.
Nice, nice choice. Okay, we've got one last one. Let's pop that one in here. So would you rather be friends with Batman or Spider-Man? A for Batman, B for Spider-Man. And of course, I'm going to ask you why. So, okay, we've got A. Foster went in first with Batman. Can I come to you and ask you why Batman's the one of choice, the person of choice, I was going to say then. Oh, you're on mute, sorry. And it
I'm
looks like you've
maybe
got a
living
cough,
for
sorry.
dinner when I'm listening, so my apologies. But yeah, simple resin is better looking.
Okay, okay. Oh, Batwoman's come in as well from Rebecca. Nice one. And did anybody? Oh, Andy, you're out on your own there with Spider-Man. What's the reason behind that?
Well, yeah, I didn't realize this would be such a controversial position. Batman just strikes me as a bit of an oddball. Like this sort of strange man who doesn't have any magic powers, but just goes around at night beating people up. At least Spider-Man's got a sense of humor, and
Okay.
well,
And
admittedly, Batman is incredibly wealthy, so maybe that would be quite a benefit.
yeah, I feel like this was supposed to be one that like showed our, the things we have in common, but this one has ended on the one where you are the only one that's gone
Yeah,
for
I'm
the
actually,
other.
if
So
anything, I'm feeling
quite a divisive
isolated and
subject.
sort of, yeah, I've been excluded from the rest of the group.
So on that note, yeah, I will hand over to you, Andy. So the rest of the session, you'll be able to redeem yourself. So over to you.
Being myself. Wow, I didn't realize the stakes were quite that high. Sam, would you mind making me a co-host
Of
for
course
the
I will.
meeting? Then
Yes.
I can do things like share my screen, etc.
Yep.
Well,
There.
good evening, everybody. Do you know what? Sam and I have been doing events a bit like this, online workshops, done about half a dozen of these over the last few months, and every time she's got a completely fresh icebreaker that I've never seen before, and they're all very charming and whimsical. So bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you for your patience this evening while we've been kind of battling with the tech side of things. Can you all see my screen? You can. Outstanding. So Zoom does some strange things. We're not used to using Zoom on the daily. If I Oh no, wrong button. There we go. So, yeah, thank you all for coming along this evening and for joining us for designing events for human connection. If you see me glance over to one side, it's because I've got my slides on another screen. So forgive me if that's if it looks like I'm looking over somewhere else. I'm giving you my full attention, I promise. So for those of you who I've not met, and I don't think there are actually many of you this evening that I've met before, my name's Andy, and I work for a company called More Human. I'm one of the directors of More Human. We are a small purpose-led business that supports community organisers, so really anybody organising events at a local level to bring people together, and we do that through our technology and through our expertise. Me personally, my background in life before More Human was in the charity sector. So I spent 15 years or so working in the charity sector as a fundraiser, working with kind of volunteer groups and volunteer sort of groups, community organizations and things like that to help support them with their fundraising. And one of the things that I kind of amassed in all those years of experience of working with really like committed, hardworking volunteers who are putting on brilliant community events is it's really hard. It's really hard work, and it can be really demanding, but it's incredibly worthwhile. And so one of the things that was really exciting to me when I joined the team at More Human was the opportunity to work on making life a little bit easier for the community organizer. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the team, about sort of More Human and what we do. Fundamentally, at More Human, we believe that the world's strongest communities are built by doing things together often. So I'm sure, and this is one of the reasons why we love working with the Eden Project team, because they share this value that for those of you who will be aware, if you read the papers, you may know that we are in the grip of what social scientists have referred to as a loneliness epidemic. Our societies are more fractured and more distant than they've ever been, and a lot of this is, you know, we're more divided. Our communities are a little bit more fractious. We spend more time sat in our homes looking at screens, which I'm aware is an ironic thing to say while I'm sat in my home talking to you all through a screen. But for us, one of the things that we observed is in order for somebody to go from feeling incredibly isolated and lonely and not being part of their community to then feeling engaged and connected to those around them, there needs to be, and we'll come to the detail of this in a little bit more shortly, there needs to be a shared activity or an event or a place or regular occurrence where people can go to connect with others. So we exist to serve the people who make those things happen. You might be one of these people yourselves, and if you're not, you certainly know who I'm talking about. You're talking about what we call the organizer, but that is that person who makes things happen, who takes the initiative to bring together people, organize events, and puts things on. We believe that those people are incredibly underserved. We believe that actually the tools and resources that are available to them are not quite fit for purpose. And so we're working to try and address that by building our own. And here's the team behind More Human. So as I mentioned, we're a small team. And in fact, actually, we're even smaller than that because one of those people has moved on to a new role. So that's the incredibly handsome, good-looking team of More Human, all gathered in Mel's kitchen shortly after the lockdown ended a couple of years ago. We got together for a big party and we got out Emma's dressing up box. So there's me, Andy. I work with our communities. I spend time talking to our communities. Basically, it's my job to help make life easier for you. So I think I have the very best job. Mel is one of our sort of leads on our product. So she helps kind of work with our users to decide what we should build and how it should look. Duncan builds it in very sort of simple terms. And Emma is one of our founders who sort of are in-house actually brand PR comms person. And so Emma's an incredibly talented comms manager. And they're just a lovely bunch of people to work with. I'm incredibly pleased that I get to work with my best friends on something that we all love equally. But you didn't come this evening just to hear me talking about my business and my friends and my company and what we do. You came here for a practical reason. You came here to sort of learn a little bit more about some of the principles behind designing events for human connection. How can we make your events? How can you kind of what are some of the ideas and principles that you can take away from this evening and apply them to your events to kind of help make them foster more effective human connection? Just really quickly, just a quick show of hands or pop in the chat. I'm really dying to know how many of you are here tonight because you're organizing a big lunch, and how many of you are here tonight because you've got something else in mind. It'd just be great just to kind of give me a quick sense of the direction, because I know that many of you will have heard about this evening through Sam's and Eden project. Excellent. Okay. A bit of both, I think, there, which is great. So we're going to what we'll do is we're not going to talk about the big lunch specifically this evening necessarily, but all of the things that we talk about will be applicable to big lunch, but they're all pretty universal, broad activities that ideas that apply to all kinds of activities. So we're going to talk about the relationship between connection and communities. We're going to then talk about some details around how to design for human connection. We're going to talk about a couple of ideas that we refer to called horizontal and vertical glue. I'll introduce you to those shortly. And there'll be an opportunity for you all to kind of break off into smaller groups to kind of try and apply some of those principles to an event that you're planning or thinking about at the moment. And then we'll wrap up. And we'll try and make sure we're away in good time. I have aspirations to be finished before we're due to wrap up at no later than 8 p.m. this evening. I'm hoping that we can kind of get you away to enjoy some of this glorious sunshine, perhaps even a little bit before then. But for anybody who wants to stick around after the session to ask any questions, to chat about anything in more detail, or if you want to have a little demo of Alfie and More Human and what we've been working on, our product, our lovely tool Alfie, I'd be happy to share that with you, but there's certainly no obligation to stick around for that part. So, connection communities, science of bonding. So this is actually underpinned by some sort of social science and some detailed research that does say that essentially repeat exposure over time is one of the crucial factors that leads to more socially connected communities. So when I talk about that repeat exposure over time, what am I actually talking about? Well, it's the difference between organizing like a one-off activity or event that is a success, that everyone has fun at, and a regular get-together or meetup. Now, they're both valuable things for their own sake. They're both wonderful ways to kind of bring a community together and celebrate. However, to kind of form a really strong bond, seeing the same people over and over again in a shared context, in an event, in a space where you all are comfortable and feel safe, is the sort of secret sauce behind connection. But it doesn't have to necessarily be a huge commitment. So there are ways that we can mitigate this within the context of individual specific activities. For example, actually, if you're planning a big one-off event like a big lunch or a community garden fete, like my village, every year my village has the annual village fun day. There's lots of activities and plans that kind of organized in the lead up to that the big day, and stuff that happens afterwards. And so those are really good opportunities to kind of meet people and connect with people. So talk about the science of connection, science of bonding. That's kind of what we're talking about. One of the ways that we try and address this is through the More Human community framework. So one of the things that we have is we think a lot about what makes really strong communities and what are the kind of the ideas that underpin community building at More Human. And so what we've got here is this quadrant, this diagram. So you've got 4 main quadrants to it: serve, structure, sustain, and seek. Each one of those S's refers to a different part of the process. And then you've got in the middle and then moving out. So we've got the center ring and then moving out to the outer rings. Those refer to sort of the proximity to your group. So let me explain. Serve is the activity that you deliver as a group, as a charity, as a club, whatever it is that you're part of. That is the quality of the activity. That is how you make people feel welcome. That is how well organized the whole thing is, how well communicated it is to your members, how people feel when they are participating in the activity. That is an absolutely crucial thing for us to try and get right. Structure, a little bit less sexy, but equally quite important. So structure is, how are you organized? How, who does what, right? Basically, are you a charity? Are you a CIC? Do you have a committee? Who does what? You know, some of those decisions that you need to try and make and get organized. And as you get bigger and you're more mature, or you exist, the structure gets a bit more formal and it gets a bit more important to kind of pin down. But even at a very early stage, there is, even if it's informal, you have a structure. Then you've got sustain. How do we keep this going? It's usually a question of people and money, basically, right? How do we fund the activities that we do? Do we have enough volunteers? Do we have enough people to help us organize this? Do we succession plan? How are we succession planning to recruit more people to kind of get us in, to get things in? And then finally, there's seek, which is, how do we reach the people that we aim to serve? Right, so that's usually something around marketing your project or marketing your club, group, society. So when we approach any of these elements, when we're thinking of, as more human, when we're thinking about elements of community building, we tend to find that the question that we're asking ourselves falls into one or more of these categories. And so that's and so tonight we're going to be talking about, really probably mostly we're going to be talking about an aspect of seek and an aspect of serve. We should have, oh, these slides are doing some strange things there. Serve and seek, there we go. Now these rings, what are they referring to? So the ring, basically, imagine you're at the center of this. You as the lead organizer are at the center of this target. And then you've got each of the sections as you go outwards. And those describe how far away from you this is. Okay, it feels a bit abstract, but imagine there's you, and then in this next ring is your core team. And then the ring behind that is the people who your team know. Maybe there's funders, maybe there's other groups and entities that you interface with and work with. So communities operate really more as an ecosystem rather than as a single entity. And so that's perhaps not less relevant to this evening, but it's useful to kind of think about in terms of like our relationship with other groups. How do we share resources? How do we use other parts of our network? We can do that another time. Okay, so let's get to designing events for human connection. We're going to be talking specifically about something we call sticky communities. And the reason why we're going to call them sticky communities is because they operate on a couple of different types of glue. Now you'll be pleased to know that I'm going to do a little bit of talking, but it's pretty soon you'll have an opportunity to sort of get into small groups and discuss this amongst yourselves and feedback a little bit. So it's not all going to be me talking this evening, but we'll start by talking about these two different types of glue. We're going to talk about vertical glue and horizontal glue. So what do we mean when we talk about vertical glue? So I would say very simply, vertical glue is it's really the serve aspect. It's the what are you doing? In most cases, when people come along to your event or they engage with your group for the very first time, they're doing so on the basis of what you're doing. That what is it and what can I expect to happen? You know, what are the series of decisions that I need to make in order to enter the room for the first time? Like once you get them over the threshold, then it becomes about keeping them. But how do we identify that first person? How do we get them to get them to come along to begin with? And so here's some of the ideas that here's some top tips here for us to think about. If you're sitting down, you're thinking to yourself, we're organizing an event, we want people to come along to it. What do we need to do to help make this more appealing and maximize what we call vertical glue? So we suggest, firstly, define your target participant. Like really know who they are and really put yourself in their shoes. Think really clearly about what do they care about and why would they show up? and ask yourself those questions. And I think it's really worthwhile actually doing that as an exercise. Answer those 2 questions as though it's you considering to attend this event. What do I care? What does my ideal type, what does my attendee really care about? And why would they show up to this thing? Equally importantly, and not on here, why wouldn't they? What are the things that might put them off from showing up? So think about, okay, what time should we be organizing this activity for in order for them to be able to make it? How do we know what sort of things that, what are the things that are really important to them? Because that's going to give you some really important clues on how to communicate to people about the type of activity or event that they're coming to. We tend to go to things or attend things that we feel are for us, right? We need to feel as though this is a space where we're expected to be, where we belong, this is appealing to us. So telling people what that is in a really compelling, really clear way is a really valuable place to start. So the first thing you've got to do is think about who that person is. Now we want to kind of maximize that appeal. So this is all about when we're talking about the activity itself, or planning, designing the activity, even not even just marketing it and communicating it. Think about the signal, the common ground. So that's what I mean by that is that you feel free to think about, okay, like what are the common problems all these people are going to come bringing, and how are we going to kind of address them, and what are we going to do in order to do that, and make sure they know about it. So in this particular case, for example, this evening, we've told you, if you're a community organizer who's organizing events in your community and you want to maximize connection and help people find your events and come along and bond, this is for you, right? That's very clear. Create shared meaning. Ultimately we're all kind of, hopefully, you can tell me if I'm wrong about this, we're all here for a similar purpose with a similar vision. We're all like-minded people. That isn't an accident, right? That is that you're not going to necessarily be able to appeal to everybody. So you want to try and be kind of clear about that and be really kind of be really transparent about signaling all those things. And actually, most importantly for me, at least, I think this is really valuable. Communicate to people what to expect, because ultimately this is going to answer that question. How are you going to deal with why they wouldn't show up, right? This is a really important question, particularly if you're planning something that's outdoors or it's a long time. You want to communicate to people really clearly, like, okay, we're going to meet at this time, we're going to go for this long, bring a coat, there'll be food provided, there won't be food provided. If you have accessibility needs, there'll be an option for this, etc. Be really clear about that. If this is a regular meetup or you're a club that's getting together frequently, and somebody is coming along for the very first time, they're probably really nervous. So communicate to them if somebody's getting, how we're going to pay. My running club is amazing at this, actually. To be fair, there's new members get welcomed every time without fail, and for their first couple of sessions, they have a buddy. They have somebody who joins them on their club run, make sure they're having a nice time, follows up with them after the session. It's such a wonderful way of making somebody feel comfortable and welcomed and valuable. And give people the space to ask their questions and answer their questions. Try and give people the opportunity to communicate with you in advance and answer their questions. Reassure them, make it feel safe. So there's a lot of stuff there to think about. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to set you a task. So we're going to split you up into a couple of groups. They're going to be small groups, so you have an opportunity to reflect and chat amongst yourselves. What I'd love you to do is spend a couple of minutes just thinking about this, making some notes, think about an event that you're currently planning. So maybe before we send you off into groups, we'll have maybe a couple of minutes of quiet, if that's all right, Sam. So I've just thrown that to you. I know it sounds very helpfully doing all the behind the scenes button pressing, and I'm improvising on the spot without any communication to her. So we have a couple of minutes of quiet just to kind of sit down, think about an event that you're planning, and think about how you're going to apply some of these things, and then you get into small groups, discuss them. And then if anyone feels like they'd like to share afterwards, we'll bring everybody back to do that. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions? We're a relatively small group, so we can probably manage. If someone wants to, feel free to.
Can I ask?
Sure.
I still don't get what you're talking. I don't know what vertical glue is.
Vertical glue, yeah. So you probably need a bit more context. Excellent. So sticky communities, we're talking about like types of glue. So vertical glue in this context is what are you doing? What's going to get someone through the door to attend your activity, right? That's the first step. I should probably tell you what horizontal glue is because I think it will make more sense, and we'll come and talk about horizontal glue in much more detail. Horizontal glue is the conditions that you then create to keep them, and it's the relationships that people form with each other. So sorry, that wasn't very clear at all, was it? I didn't say that, did I? Vertical glue refers to what are we doing and the type of activity that we're planning and how we make it, how we communicate it to people. And then horizontal glue refers to the people, because that's the other big factor that determines whether or not you come. It might have been a brilliantly well run activity, but if I hate everybody, I'm probably never coming back. So how do we design an environment when we're talking about horizontal glue that allows us to create a space that allows people to make friendships and form relationships as they go forwards? So it's a bit of a kind of clunky metaphor, I think, that there's two different types of glue, but we try and look at it through that lens because I think they're relatively distinct things. And as event managers, we are sort of the masters of controlling this environment to kind of maximize both of these things. So it's useful, I think, to think about them as slightly independent things. Does that answer your question, Joan? It does. Excellent. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, speak now. If the last chance, if you had any final, if there's any other big concepts that I've insufficiently explained. Okay, fab. So let's take 2 minutes for some quiet reflection and kind of note taking silently. So you're not on the spot. Feel free to turn your camera off and mute yourself. And then in 2 minutes, Sam's going to send you to a breakout room where we invite you to discuss and share your kind of thoughts with each other.
Okay, I think that's about 2 minutes. So I will open the breakout rooms and let Zoom do its thing, and well, Zoom you there. It should happen automatically. So best of luck, everybody. Okay, it might just be slow. Okay, that's just Rebecca and Jan left. It's saying that it's doing its thing. It might just be an internet thing. There we go. That's Rebecca gone. So just Jan. Jan, if it doesn't happen automatically, it might be that you could. Oh, there we go. It's just the internet. Lovely. I think that's a full house in the breakout rooms, Andy.
Well done for rallying. How did you get in?
It was a fast start, wasn't it? I think it's lucky that we've done it a few times just to roll with the punches.
How did you get in the end? Did you have to?
So there are only 2 people that have access to the email account, so I was busy WhatsApping and calling, and in the end, Claire got her daughter to access it remotely while Claire was driving and try and send me codes that were being sent. So yeah, that's good. But she's just requested from ICT that I get added to that inbox so that it doesn't happen again. I mean, of all the times, of all the days that for that to happen.
Not the end of the world. Could have been worse.
Thankfully, everybody
just,
stuck with us though.
Yeah, I was sat there thinking, what time do we have to do we give up?
I know. Well, Beverly had messaged and said she's got a paid Zoom account of her own. So she was like, do you want to send them a new link? So I was on the verge of that, of like email everybody, go, here's a new link. And then it came through. So yeah. Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry for, making you sit there wondering, sitting on your hands, like, when's it going to happen?
It's all right. No trouble. These things happen.
Are you all right? It's not thrown you. You're okay rolling with it.
I think so. Yeah, no, I think so.
Earlier on today, Andy, I meant to ask whether from a previous session that you've run of this, hang on, let me just pause the recording.
Welcome back, everybody. Is everybody back? Everybody back? Yes, everyone. Welcome back. How was that? How was 10 minutes enough time? Not quite enough time? How do you feel about work? How does that work for you? Someone give me. Anyone want to volunteer a comment on that? Sam and I were just discussing whether or not it's too long or not enough time. I'm going to interpret the silence there as
Hello.
Do you not know? Rebecca, yes, hi. How was that in terms of time?
Hi, I know you haven't spoken to me or we've met before, but we have now. I do a lot of talking. I can shut up too. But I was obviously met some other people too, and we were discussing number 1 and number 2, but they also brought up the reassurance. They don't know how to tackle that area of reassuring situation.
Okay, excellent. So how do we
But we-
reassure our prospective attendees?
Right, but we talked about what obviously they were going to focus on for the community, whatever they're going to do, situation, and then how we can part of that glue. So how I look at glue is very messy, and yeah, your hands do stick together, but keeping that community to stick together, it's going to be a very hard task, I feel. There's a lot of divide out there with mental health stuff. We've got all this financial worries going on in people's lives. So to even get them to come out, I think, in today's situation is going to be extremely hard. But with good organisation, you can make these things happen. And if you are successful in doing, piloting one, you can then probably do another one. I will give, for example, I was part of a organisation that we organised a big, massive musical event down at Ramsgate Seafront a few years, 2014. We raised in total £6,000. So,
Fabulous.
that was, but sadly, the council said, no, sorry, you can't do another one the following year because we've invited somebody else to do stuff. So it's like, yeah, okay. And I think, we did try and do something somewhere else, but then they said, no, we've got this going on. So it's like, yeah. So, things can happen. And also what I just said, the last point, what I said was, you don't even have to charge. You just say, can bring something along, depending on what you're organising. And, you can charge, but make tickets like £1. If you get 1,000 people turning up, you've made £1,000. Every pound makes a difference. Charge children 50p because there is a big poverty situation going on in our country. So yeah,
Absolutely. Those are a couple of really good points there. Thank you for that, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
So
I'll shut up now.
I'll pick up a couple of your comments. No, it's great. No, I invited participation. So thank you for that. So I'll come back to that initial question you said about getting stuck on how do we reassure our prospective attendees. That will come back to that in a second, because I think that's quite a valuable thing to quickly discuss. And I'm actually curious to hear if that came up in any other discussions, or if anyone's got any thoughts they'd like to add to that. On the subject of taking payments or collecting donations, if that is something, and as you say, that's very much a question that on an event by event basis you might need to consider. If your event has costs that you need to cover, you might want to consider collecting some kind of payments or donations or contributions. If it's a fundraising activity that you want to support a good cause for, then obviously that becomes a factor. One model that we have found very successful in that particular space is pay what you can or pay what you want pricing, where you can set perhaps a minimum contribution amount, but you can give people who can afford to or would like to the option to add an additional contribution on top. We have in our sort of tool, we have a mechanism to do that. And we found that when our communities do use that, they have generated sort of up to an additional 30% revenue than they would have done previously. So that's a really powerful way of framing that. You say, look, maybe this event is free to attend, but there are some costs. If you'd like to make a contribution, is how you do so. And that's a nice way of doing that, which takes away some of the stigma and some of the pressure. Joan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I thought it's really, really important that we do put what it's going to cost on the poster. I've had to contact a few organisations about events they were organising, and they were going, "Oh, but it's free," and it's like, well, I was panicking because I'm out of work at the moment. It didn't say it was free. Please, can you make that explicit? So that was my.
And that's a perfect segue into my comments about how you might reassure your attendees about things. So that first question one of those early questions I posed, which is like, what are some of the things that might stop someone from attending this? And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to go and ask somebody who is a part of your target audience and say, this is, what are we missing? What haven't we communicated clearly here? What are some of the things that might stop you from attending? And then when I say reassure people, I mean like, proactively communicate to them. If that's in an event page, it might be on a poster, or it might be that you've got an event listing on a website like More Human. You can explicitly state those things, and good copywriting can go a long way in that respect. And if you're struggling with some good copywriting, that's where More Human again can help, which I'll talk about again a bit later. Did anybody else? I'm very conscious that I've said that we're going to try and get you away early tonight, and we've got a whole other set of topics to talk about. So before we move on, did anyone else have anything really quick they wanted to add from the discussions they had in their breakout rooms quickly? No. Excellent. We'll move on in that case. You can imagine I'm a nightmare with timekeeping on this sort of thing, because I'm so excited and enthusiastic about all of these ideas that I want to talk about. So I'd happily just sit here and chat with you all very casually for the next 4 or 5 hours if I was left to my own devices. So I can sort of see Sam tapping her watch under the camera, going, move it along, Andy. These people have got things to do. Okay, horizontal glue. So quick recap, we were talking about the difference between vertical glue and horizontal glue. In this context, vertical glue refers to the activity that you're planning and how you can communicate it. And then horizontal glue is largely based around the people who attend the thing. All right, so you can organize a really brilliant activity, but if you hate everybody or the wrong atmosphere is there, they're not going to come back. A particular example I often think about, in fact, Sam and I were discussing this just earlier today, is parkrun. I think parkrun get this really spot on. If anyone's ever attended a parkrun or volunteered or helped at a parkrun taking part, I was doing a parkrun the other week, and there was a lady who was just a little bit quicker than I was, and I was really suffering for the last sort of like quarter of a mile of this particular course. And I just never met this lady before, never spoken to her before, and I just stuck to her like glue, you know, and we just kind of nudged each other on to the end of the activity. And at the end of it, we both gave each other a high five, thanked her for it, swapped, you know, we swapped names, and I'll see her again next week. And now I've got a new friend, and I'm that little bit more comfortable or excited about going next time, because I know it's a welcoming environment, and I know it's a space where there's a really strong sense of community that suits me. Now, obviously, that's a very particular example, but it's really useful for you to think through what are the ways in which, in our environment, in our context, we can create space for those kinds of interactions. So we need to try and think about what's the how are you organizing, what's the agenda for your activity? Are you intentionally creating social space? Are you creating opportunities for your participants to talk to one another in an informal way, but giving them enough structure? So it could be really, right, it could just be having 10 minutes at the end, 10 minutes at the beginning for people to chat about themselves and what they do. It could be an opportunity, like kind of that kind of unstructured networking, if you like, to use that horrible term. Or it could be, actually, we're going to kind of engineer, like we have this evening, breakout sessions where you have a particular task and a particular thing that you're kind of working on or talking about with each other, but is designed ideally to give you something that's united to talk about. So you share ideas and you share kind of common problems. You know, what are you doing to organize your events and activities that encourage that, and are you intentionally creating them? What are you doing in terms of how are you talking to your attendees before, after, during your activity? You know, is this just send? Am I just in send mode? Am I just putting up a poster on the village hall that says there is an event on this day, come please? Or am I going out of my way to communicate? Like, if you come along, you get a welcome email, you get a follow-up comms after the event email thanking people for coming. You know, if you're using social media to market, how are you responding to people's comments and kind of engaging in the dialogue? Can people see who else is attending, essentially, and that it's really people-centered? So you're creating that space where that person relates to you as a host. That's another way of doing this. So there's a relationship they have with the people who are attending, but there's also the relationship they have with you as a host. So, for example, one thing we try to do with all of our event pages on More Human is make sure that you have an event's host, and that host has a name and is a person. And you've got a little profile picture and a bio. So on the page that you use to register for this evening, there's a little about Andy and a little bit about Sam, what we like, who we are. And that's a really easy way to just signal to people, yeah, there's a friendly face and I know a little bit about them, and therefore that's a much more welcoming way of doing it than just being a nameless organization that's organizing an activity or an event. If I'm writing you a message, like I did to apologize for the delay this evening, it's from a person, not from an automated email. It comes from Andy. So that's one way you can kind of address that. So that's one way to think about it. So think about every opportunity you have with communication as an opportunity to engage with a person, and it should be person-to-person conversation. Okay, Then there's the kind of actual activity that you're delivering and the activity that you're doing. So we talk about how do you structure the activities, and this would just going to vary depending on what you're doing. Side by side activities, I love this. This is an opportunity for people to do things, similar things, but next to somebody, right? We talk about. So is everyone familiar with the men's sheds movement? Yes, couple nods. Okay, I think they do this absolutely beautifully, because men's sheds really nail the goal here of really strong horizontal glue, which is it's a bunch of blokes in a shed fixing stuff, but it has the kind of the amazing social byproduct of creating these activities. And there's a lot of evidence that sort of says that having a kind of activity that you do alongside another person provides you with the perfect opportunity for your conversations to wander. There's something quite intimidating about looking somebody in the eye and going, hey, do you know what? I'm kind of struggling a little bit with making friends, and I'm a bit lonely and a bit isolated. That's a really, really hard thing to do. But for the conversation to kind of make its way onto something more like that, whilst you're busy tinkering with something and you've got something to look at, actually makes that much, much easier. So there's a group that we've worked with in the past called Run Talk Run, who do this, where they do organize 5K jogs and chats in various different places. And it's the same thing. It's like, we're just here to chat and go for a jog. And the sort of action of running alongside somebody makes it easier to have a conversation. Side-by-side activities are really, really good ways of encouraging sort of social, that horizontal glue. Literally, I guess, side-by-side in this case. It's really important that you communicate like lots of different ways to participate. So again, think about how you're organizing your events and activities to make sure that everybody can take part in a way that suits them. So, you know, assigning people the right roles or giving people the right activities, the right jobs, really important. Not everything works for everybody. And so this is another way of thinking, okay, for somebody who's very outwardly gregarious, like a me, let's be honest, like an extrovert who loves to just give me a job, go and get me selling raffle tickets, because I want to talk to as many strangers as I possibly can. That would be absolutely horrifying to my wife. She would never do that in a million years. You know, but is there a way that she can participate and contribute in a way that is meaningful and suits her, right? So again, we want to really make sure that we're thinking through kind of how we create this space to give people an opportunity to relate to one another, but do it in a way that feels safe and that works for them. Formats and transitions. This is a way of, again, considering what are you actually planning and what are the accommodations that you might want to make to people. Are you offering an online activity? Do you have a good weather plan? You know, are you inadvertently creating barriers to engagement and communication with people just through the structure, the place that you're organizing, where it is, what time it is? Those sorts of things really matter because they influence who can attend and how they can participate. I've ever so slightly rattled through that because I'm very conscious of time. But what we'd really like you to do is to repeat the task that you just did. So spend a couple of minutes of quiet reflection, and then we're going to send you off to your breakout rooms and get you an opportunity to kind of talk and kind of discuss those things. And then we'll bring everyone back to kind of wrap up and get your final thoughts. Joan, how did I do this time? Was that a bit clearer?
I'm sorry, I'm at the stage of the night that I'm wilting, so it's not about you not being clear, it's about just recognising that I've not got much mental capacity left.
That is 10 to 8
Sorry.
on a weeknight. You absolutely, do you know what? It's because it's the extra hour of sunlight has got me discombobulated. But Sam, are you happy to give everyone another minute or so and then we'll break off?
Yeah, sure. I will break the rooms. No, I won't break the rooms. I'll open the breakout rooms in another minute. Okay, let's give this a go. I'll try not to vandalize them, Rebecca. Okay, let's open them now.
Oh. William's making lots of noise in the background. Is that coming through?
No, didn't hear anything.
Oh,
No.
okay, great. I think we're just
Phoebe,
about,
hopefully it's just the internet that might be slow, but it should
yeah.
zoom you away any second.
Welcome back, everybody. I was just saying to Sam, and I apologise if this is an issue, but we're just arriving at that portion of the evening where my wife is about to do battle with my 11-year-old son about getting ready for bed and things like that. So I apologise if there's any background noise, if you ever hear, and if you hear any arguing or anything on the other side of that door. Fab. Does anybody have anything they would like to share from their discussion?
Yeah, I guess we were just talking about identifying ways that people want to contribute to their communities, and whether that's just something that really just happens naturally, organically, that those people that want to contribute the teas and coffees and those people that want to talk more just naturally do that, or whether sometimes it might take a little bit of nurturing and seeing that's, oh, this person, this is how they like to contribute, how do we encourage this more, and equally just giving people that chance to build their skills in perhaps something they're not as comfortable at contributing, but they would like to, and like how as a community like that can be supported.
And what did you, that's a really interesting area to discuss, actually, to mine. Kelly, did you have any, what did you land on at that point? Did you think, is it just that people will make themselves known, or is it, do you feel that there are different ways of nudging people? What did you think about that?
I think it's a bit of both. I think sometimes it might just happen naturally, but then it could also be just community members noticing that someone's good at something and being like, oh, hey, do you think you could do this next time? Or actually, I need help with this thing. Could you help with that? So it's just about, yeah, being able to see that in other people and, initiating or asking for it.
Absolutely. No, I believe really strongly that a well-timed, well-worded ask of the right person to do the right thing at the right time is crucial. Most people, a lot of people are very happy to help and delighted to help if they're asked. And so don't assume necessarily that everyone will offer. But the art, the skill is identifying the right thing to ask them to do and in the right way. And we talk a lot about we've got a whole separate thing on a whole separate session on this, actually, called something I did called incremental involvement, which is kind of take somebody through very low effort tasks and asks that you might start them off with before kind of building them up over time. So the idea that somebody, it might not be appropriate that they come along to their first meeting and you co-opt them to join the committee, right? what are the steps that you need to follow kind of in between there? And so that's a really interesting sort of area about kind of engagement and recruitment of volunteers and supporters to do more for your community. Fabulous. That sounds like a really interesting discussion. We've just got a couple of moments left, so I'm just going to wrap up with a bit of a summary, and then we'll let you go for those of you who are wilting a little bit. So here we go. To remind you, so a quick recap then. We build sticky communities using two kinds of glue: vertical glue, which is how we draw more people in, maximize the appeal of our events, and make it easier for people to participate and take part. And then we talk about horizontal glue, which is how do we get people coming back? How do we design the experience of our activities and events to maximize human connections, to build a social space for people to feel like they're comfortable to participate in? We want people to come and we want them to come back. Vertical glue and horizontal glue. And so a couple of ideas to hold in mind as you plan your events. So when you're thinking about, for example, your big lunch or any of the other events that you're planning, what can you do differently or apply to that event now that will maximize this and make this part of the process a bit easier and give your attendees a better experience on the whole, and save yourselves a lot of headaches in the same process. For those of you who would like to, I'm happy to stick around for a little bit this evening. If anyone has any particular questions, they want to work through a particular example of an activity or an event, I'm happy to chat about it. Or if anyone wants to hear a little bit more about Alfie, which is the service that we've been working on at More Human, and the tool that we've got, the product that we've made that kind of packs a lot of this experience in. You know, we've designed a tool that we hope does a lot of this stuff on your behalf as an organizer. So if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about that, I'm very happy to chat about it, but there's certainly no obligation to do so if you'd like to get away. Or even if you'd like to hear more, but you can't stay now and want to just have a chat later, that's absolutely fine. One thing I would say is, as a thank you for coming along, if you did decide you wanted to give us a try, we'd be delighted to offer you a three-month membership to More Human with no obligations there. So if you ever did want to feel like you need a resource or you need more tools for your community or your group, and you want to give something new a go that's built by community builders for community builders. Never said that before. Not sure how I feel about that wording. I'll try that. Would be delighted. And don't worry if you haven't got that. I'll send out a link in the email notes and everything. I'll send out an email tomorrow with links and slides and all those bits and pieces. That is all from me this evening.